The dark void of space was alive with a flicker of starlight, casting an eerie glow upon two opposing fleets locked in a silent standoff. The flagship of the Terran Dominion, the Fortitude, a behemoth of twisted steel and plasma cannons, loomed ominously across from the Zarthian warship, the Eclipsion, its smooth alien hull pulsating with a vibrant, otherworldly glow. Between them, a fragile peace hovered, ready to snap under the weight of centuries-old hatred. The Galactic Council, in a desperate last-ditch effort to save the galaxy from the brink of annihilation, had convened on the matter of peace, offering only one solution, a solution as old as time itself: the Marriage Pact, an ancient custom, once used by the progenitors of all known races to forge alliances that transcended the boundaries of war. One of blood, one of fate. The pact will end this war, declared the Council's High Arbiter, his voice laced with finality, as his eyes darted from the human representatives to the stoic Zarthian delegates. A marriage between your greatest leaders, bound by more than just duty, but by shared blood, shared history. A peace forged in a union that cannot be undone. In the vastness of the council chamber, the proposal was met with cold silence, the weight of the galaxy's future pressing down on every soul in the room. Kale Draven stood at the edge of the room, his gaze fixed on the holographic display of the warships outside. A man who had fought in more battles than he cared to count, who had lost his family to Zarthian invaders years ago, was now being asked to marry an enemy. The Terran commander, a decorated war hero of both flesh and myth, exhaled sharply, his jaw clenched. His body, bruised by years of conflict, seemed to carry the weight of the galaxy on its shoulders. Kale wasn't just a soldier. He was a symbol of humanity's will to survive, to fight back against the overwhelming tide of alien superiority. "So, you want me to marry her?" Kale spoke, his voice a low rumble. "To end this war? To end all this bloodshed?" The human diplomat beside him, a pale man with wiry glasses, looked helpless. "Not just you, Commander. Her." From the opposite side of the chamber, the doors opened with an elegant, almost predatory grace. Entering with an air of absolute authority was Empress Sarathe of the Zarthian Matriarchy. She was every bit the embodiment of her people, regal, radiant, and seemingly untouched by the conflicts that had raged across the stars for centuries. Her people revered her as a goddess, her name whispered in awe across the universe. To them, she was a beacon of peace. But Kale saw only the conqueror, the one who had raised colonies and killed without mercy. Her silvered skin shimmered in the dim light, her emerald eyes glowing like distant stars. A crown of intricate, living crystal sat atop her head, pulsing gently with her own bioenergy, a mark of her power. When she spoke, her voice was like a breeze of wind through a canyon, both commanding and hauntingly soft. "I will not marry you," Sarathe declared coldly, her gaze meeting Kale's for the first time, "not out of love, but out of necessity. For my people." Kale's heart stirred, but not with desire. There was something in her words that struck him to his core, a sharp reminder how little power he held in this moment. He was a tool in a game too large for any one person to control. His life, his fate, was now entwined with hers, whether he liked it or not. The pact was to be made official, a binding that was both ceremonial and biological. The Council insisted it was the only way to break the cycle of violence that had kept their species in perpetual conflict. To marry the enemy was to combine their fates, to bridge the chasm between them. A genetic binding ceremony would follow, their DNA woven together, linking them in ways both profound and irreversible. Kale's mind swirled with the implications. He would have to share a bond with this alien, not just on a psychological level, but physically. Their bodies would become part of each other. The thought sickened him, but he couldn't deny the inevitable truth. If this union failed, both their civilizations would fall into ruin. But even as the words of the council faded into the background, he couldn't shake the strange pull he felt toward her. He knew it wasn't love, not yet, but there was something undeniable, a force, an energy that pulsed through the room, through him, through them both. Later, within the grand hall of the Eclipsion, the ceremony began. The room was filled with dignitaries from both sides, standing silently as the ancient ritual began. The air hummed with anticipation as the priestess of the Zarthian Matriarchy stepped forward, her eyes glowing softly, her hands raised in a gesture of divine blessing. You will bond with her, Commander, your lives, intertwined by the cosmos themselves. The priestess's voice was a song of inevitability. As the golden threads of energy began to hum in the air, Kale stood, his mind heavy, his body stiff. Before him, Sarathe was calm, unshaken, her eyes a galaxy unto themselves, unreadable. The moment their hands touched, the ceremony began. Golden light engulfed them both, and a strange energy surged through Kale's body. He felt his mind briefly crack open, his very essence pulled toward her. It wasn't just a physical sensation. It was as though he could feel the very heartbeat of her species, her pain, her sacrifices, and, for the briefest of moments, her loneliness. What is this? Kale gasped, struggling against a flood of emotions that weren't his. Sarath's eyes met his, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something human in her expression. This is more than a marriage. This is a unity of fate. We are not just two souls. We are the hope of two dying civilizations. As the light of the ceremony dimmed, the entire galaxy seemed to. The eclipsion hummed with an otherworldly energy, its sleek, shimmering corridors echoing with the footsteps of a people long accustomed to silence. As Kale Draven wandered the halls, the oppressive weight of his marriage to Empress Sarathe was inescapable. He was both an ambassador of peace and a prisoner, confined by the invisible chains of duty. Every corner of this alien ship felt like an alien world, a place where humanity's footprints were yet to be left. The Zarthian architecture was unlike anything he had ever known, sleek, flowing, organic. There were no jagged edges here, no harsh lines. Everything was smooth, soft, as though the ship itself had been grown from the depths of space rather than built. The walls were living things, pulsating gently with light that seemed to feed on the crew's emotions. You look lost. Kale spun, his hand instinctively moving to the hilt of the weapon that was never far from his side. It was a reflex, one born from years of fighting on the front lines, of seeing enemies around every corner. But standing before him, her eyes shimmering like twin stars, was Sarathe. Her presence filled the hall, radiating authority like a gravitational force. "I'm not lost," Kale replied, his voice low. "I'm just out of place." Sarathe regarded him with the slightest of smiles, her lips curling, not in mockery, but in a way that almost seemed like understanding. "You are, but that doesn't mean you're unwelcome." She walked past him, her pace slow and measured. Kale watched her, unable to shake the feeling that he had entered a world far beyond his understanding. He followed her, unsure of his place in this strange dance of diplomacy. "You should prepare for the council meeting tonight," she said, her voice cool and detached, yet there was a flicker of something else beneath the surface. "The Zarthian Matriarchy is less than pleased with your presence here." Kale had already sensed a hostility from her people, the cold, appraising stares from the guards, the whispered conversations among the Zarthian diplomats. They saw him as a threat, a symbol of their defeat, a reminder of the fragile peace that hung by the thinnest of threads. He was an outsider in a world where he didn't belong, a human among an ancient and proud race. "What do you think of this peace?" Kale asked, his voice low, though he wasn't sure if it was meant for her or for himself. Sarathe stopped, turning to face him. Her eyes, as ever, were unreadable, yet there was a flicker of something, doubt, perhaps. "It is not about what I think. It is about what must be. My people are dying, Kale. The war has taken too much from us. Our resources are drained, our people broken. If this union can save them, then I will endure." Kale felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. He knew war. He had seen what it did to people, the destruction, the hollowed-out eyes of soldiers who had fought too long. But what he hadn't known, what Sarathe had just revealed to him, was the other side of it, the cost to an entire civilization, the exhaustion that came with endless war, the inevitable spiral towards self-destruction. "And what about you?" he asked softly. "What do you want, Empress?" For a moment, Sarathe's gaze softened, though only briefly. She looked away, her eyes distant, as though searching for something beyond the confines of the ship. "I want peace, Commander, but not at any cost. Not if it means losing everything I've worked for. The sound of footsteps interrupted their moment of quiet, and the guards arrived to escort them to the council chambers. The moment was over, and the weight of their duties pressed back down on them both. The council chamber was a grand affair, a vast hall where the leaders of the Zarthian Matriarchy gathered to discuss the fate of their people. The air was thick with tension, as dignitaries from various factions murmured amongst themselves. Kale fell out of place here, surrounded by alien faces whose expressions were as alien as their forms. Sarathe sat at the head of the table, her posture regal, unyielding. Kale stood beside her, an uneasy reminder that their bond was both political and personal. He felt their connection, the faint hum in the back of his mind, but it was still a strange and unsettling thing, a tether that linked them in ways neither of them fully understood. As the meeting began, it quickly became apparent just how fragile this peace truly was. The Zarthian elders were less than thrilled with the idea of a human standing in their midst. Their eyes were sharp, their words cutting. They questioned Kale's loyalty, his intentions, and his ability to lead their people to peace. "The humans have always been a scourge upon our world," one elder declared, his voice laced with venom. "What makes you believe that this marriage will change anything?" Kale held his ground, his jaw clenched, though his mind raced. "It's not just about the marriage," he said, his voice steady. "It's about ending the endless cycle of destruction. We've both lost too much already. We can't afford to keep fighting." The elder sneered, but Sarah's gaze silenced him. She spoke then, her voice calm and measured, though it carried the weight of an emperor's command. "Enough. We will not debate the value of this peace. This marriage is our future, whether you like it or not." There was a moment of silence, the tension palpable. The council members exchanged glances, but none dared to challenge the empress. Kale could feel it then, the unspoken power she commanded, not just through her position, but through her very presence. She was more than a ruler. She was an anchor, the unyielding heart of her people. But there was a cost to her authority. Kale saw it in the lines beneath her eyes, the weight of 1,000 decisions pressing on her shoulders. She was a leader in every sense of the word, but in the quiet moments, Kale could sense her isolation. She was alone, as he was, bound by the expectations of their people, and now bound each other. As the meeting continued, Kale and Sarathe exchanged few words, but the bond between them deepened, strange and volatile, tugging at the edges of their psyches. Every glance, every brush of their hands, every fleeting thought shared in the quiet of their minds. It was all part of a dance neither of them had chosen, but one they were now helplessly swept into. The night ended with little fanfare. The council adjourned, and the weight of the decision hung in the air like a storm cloud, waiting to break. Kale walked beside Sarathe, their footsteps the only sound in the cold, sterile hallways of the Eclipsion. "This peace," Kale started, unsure of his own thoughts. "Do you really think it will hold?" Sarathe didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stopped in her tracks, turning to face him. Her eyes glowed in the dim light, her expression unreadable. "I don't know, Kale, but if we don't try, if we don't give everything for this, then we will never know peace. And that, I fear, will be our undoing." The void of space trembled with the weight of betrayal. The Eclipsion shook violently, as an explosion echoed through the hull. Lights flickered, alarms screamed, and the walls of the grand Zarthian warship trembled under the assault. Kale's body slammed against the floor, his breath knocked out of him. Through the smoke and chaos, he could hear the sounds of running footsteps, shouting voices, and the unmistakable hum of enemy weapons charging. It didn't take long to understand what had just happened. The peace they had fought for, the tenuous marriage that was supposed to save two civilizations, had been shattered by a deadly strike from within. The war that Sarathe and Kale had worked so hard to contain, that they had sworn to end, refused to die. It had only taken one faction, one rogue element, to ignite the flames of conflict again. "Kale!" Sarathe's voice pierced through the chaos, her presence a calming anchor in the midst of the storm. She appeared in the doorway, her form bathed in the flickering red emergency lights. Her eyes, usually so composed, were now filled with rare fury. The gravity of the situation was clear. It wasn't just a mutiny. It was a calculated move designed to tear their fragile union apart. Kale scrambled to his feet, instinctively reaching for the sidearm holstered at his waist. But Sarah S. Gaze stopped him. "The ship is compromised," she said, her voice controlled but edged with tension. "We need to get to the control room. Now." "What's happening?" Kale asked, his voice grim, though his thoughts were racing. "Who's behind this?" Sarah S. Gaze turned dark. "It's Admiral Voss. He's the one who's been orchestrating the rebellion from within." Voss! The name hit Kale like a punch to the gut. Admiral Voss had once been a trusted officer in the Terran Dominion, a brilliant strategist whose loyalty was unquestioned. But it seemed that trust had been a lie. Voss was no longer the man Kale had fought alongside. He was now a threat to everything they had built. "We need to stop him," Kale growled, his fists tightening, "before he starts a war that we can't stop." Sarathia's eyes softened for a moment, but only a moment. "This is no longer just about us, Kale. It's about saving both our peoples from the abyss. You and I, we were never meant to lead this peace alone." Her words struck him, deep and true. The weight of their marriage had always been a burden. But now, it was the only thing that stood between two galactic empires and the total annihilation of both. If Voss succeeded, the cycle of war would begin anew, and their civilizations would be torn apart. Everything they had worked for, their lives, their futures, would have been for nothing. They raced through the corridors, dodging blaster fire and scrambling to avoid the destruction that was rapidly spreading through the ship. Kale could feel the tension building in the air, thick and suffocating. It wasn't just the Eclipsian that was in danger. It was everything they had fought for, everything they had sacrificed. "The bond between us," Kale muttered, more to himself than to Sarathe. "It's more than just a political marriage, isn't it?" Sarathe didn't answer immediately, but the faintest flicker of understanding crossed her face. "It's the thread that binds us, Kale. Without it, we are just two rulers playing a game we can never win. But together, we are something greater. We are the future." Kale's heart clenched. He had never believed in destiny, never thought that a single bond could change the course of the galaxy. But in that moment, he realized that what they had was more than just a peace treaty or an alliance. It was a key to survival, for both their peoples, for their worlds, and for their very futures. As they entered the control room, Kale's eyes locked onto the screens, where the full scale of the damage was laid bare. Voss's forces had infiltrated the ship, using the chaos of the initial attack as a cover to breach the ship's core systems. In the control room, chaos reigned, but it was quickly clear that Voss wasn't content with sabotage alone. He wanted full control, and he was willing to burn everything down to get it. "Voss!" Kale muttered again, this time with a bitterness that tasted like bile. "He's going to destroy everything, isn't he?" Sarah the S. gaze hardened. "He's already begun." In that moment, the door to the control room slammed open, and a squad of heavily armed soldiers flooded in, weapons raised. At their forefront was Admiral Voss, his cold eyes gleaming with a twisted satisfaction. "I thought you'd be here, Commander," Voss sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "Did you really think a marriage would save you? Save us? This alliance was always a lie. The Zarthians will fall. The humans will fall. It's only a matter of time before the galaxy knows that peace is a fantasy." Kale's grip tightened on the blaster at his side, but Sarathe raised a hand, signaling him to hold his fire. "Voss," she said, her voice cold but unwavering. "You betrayed us all." Voss laughed, a dark, guttural sound that echoed in the chamber. "I haven't betrayed anything. I've simply seen the truth. You and the human commander, you're a symbol, not a solution. The galaxy needs strength, not weakness. You were never going to end this war. But I will." Kale stepped forward, his body tense, ready to fight. "You're wrong, Voss. It's not about strength or power. It's about survival. And if you destroy this ship, destroy what we've worked for, then you'll be the one to condemn us all to extinction." Voss's eyes narrowed. "The only extinction here will be yours, Commander." The room exploded into chaos. Blaster fire ricocheted off the walls as Sarathe and Kale fought side by side, their bond pulsing through them, guiding their movements. For a brief moment, the bond was a weapon, their thoughts moving in sync, their actions a flawless reflection of the other's intentions. But the odds were against them. Voss's forces were too many, their weapons too powerful. The ship trembled again, the lights flickering as the core systems began to fail. Every second counted. "Kale, we can't win this fight here," Sarathe shouted over the chaos. "We need to end this, now." Kale looked at her, his heart racing. "How?" She gestured to the control panel, where a massive red button blinked ominously. "I'll initiate the Exodus protocol. It's our last chance to escape the core. It's the only way to stop the destruction." Kale's eyes widened in realization. "And what about you?" Sarathe's gaze softened, but only for a moment. "I'll stay behind. Someone has to make sure it's done." "No!" Kale shouted, stepping forward. "We do this together." For a heartbeat, they stood there, facing the end of everything. Then, with a single press of the button, they initiated the sequence that would save them all. The countdown began. Time was running out. The Eclipsion shook one last time. The battle for the ship was far from over, but Kale and Sarathe had made their choice. They were no longer just rulers or pawns in a galactic game. They were the last hope for a future that had yet to be written. The final seconds felt like an eternity. The countdown blared to a control room, its rhythmic ticking a grim reminder of the destruction they had just unleashed, and the hope it could still ignite. The ship's systems were spiraling out of control, the once pristine hulls now bathed in crimson light. But amidst the chaos, Kale and Sarathe remained steadfast, side by side. As the Eclipsion began its final descent, the sounds of battle growing distant, Kale felt the power of the Exodus protocol thrumming beneath his feet. It wasn't just a failsafe. It was a message, a beacon that would call the galaxy to witness the end of the war, the beginning of something new. If they were to survive, this moment had to be more than just escape. It had to be rebirth. "You're sure this will work?" Kale asked, his voice hoarse, his pulse a drumbeat in his ears. He knew what Sarathe had planned. The protocol would activate a failsafe that would send a massive surge of energy, a combined Zarthian and Terran biofield, across the galaxy, signaling the shift in the balance of power. It would broadcast their union into every system, every corner of the galaxy, ensuring that their decision would resonate beyond the confines of the ship. But at what cost? Sarathe looked at him with a strength that belied the weight on her shoulders. "We've already paid the price, Kale. This is the only way to save them. To save us." Her voice wavered for the first time, betraying the enormity of the sacrifice they were about to make. She was right. There was no going back. Kale reached out, his hand brushing against hers. The bio-link between them surged, stronger than ever before. The bond that had started as a fragile tether now felt like an unbreakable chain, tying them together in ways no one could have predicted. It wasn't just a political union. It was something far deeper, the union of two people who had shared their souls, their pain, their hopes, and their futures. The future of two civilizations rested on this moment. "We will be remembered," Kale said, his voice steady despite the storm raging around them. "Not as rulers, not as soldiers, but as the ones who ended the war, the ones who made peace possible." Sarathe nodded, her eyes unwavering. "We will be remembered as the ones who changed the stars themselves." Outside, the galaxy watched. Across star systems, the signal of their union reached deep into the fabric of the cosmos. The surge of energy that emanated from the Eclipsion was not just a transmission. It was a transformation. It tore through the divide between species, weaving together the human and Zarthian consciousnesses in ways that had never been done before. Minds, once separate, were now bound together in a new network, a psychic web that connected all who chose to embrace it. Back on the Eclipsion, the final moments were drawing near. Kale and Sarathe stood in the heart of the control room, their faces bathed in the golden light of the transmission. The air crackled with power, the energy between them building to a crescendo. And then, with a single command, Sarathe activated the final phase. The ship shuddered one last time, and the energy surged. The Eclipsion exploded outward in a burst of radiant light. Not an explosion of destruction, but creation. The ship disintegrated into stardust, and in its place, a cosmic wave rippled outward, stretching across the galaxy. For those watching, it was as if the universe itself held its breath. All over the galaxy, From the deepest reaches of the Terran colonies to farthest Zarthian worlds, the signal was received. The memories of every human in Zarthian were touched, their minds opening to one another in ways they could never have imagined. The war was over. The hatred was gone, and in its place, a new understanding bloomed. Fragile, imperfect, but real. On Earth, on Zarthia, in every corner of the galaxy where war had once reigned, people felt it. The sensation was foreign at first, like an echo of something lost. But soon it became clear. The war was over. Peace, Kale whispered. His eyes wide as the bond between him and Saratha surged one final time. It worked. But the price was steep. The final act of the Exodus Protocol had drained them both. Saratha's face was pale, her body trembling with the aftereffects of the energy that flowed through her. Kale could feel it, too, the exhaustion, the rawness of everything they had given. The bond between them was no longer just a psychic connection. It was their life force, their very essence, bound together in a way that neither could undo. "We did it," Saratha breathed, her voice barely audible. She took Kale's hand, her grip weak but steady. "We saved them. Saved us." Kale nodded, but his heart twisted as he looked at her. He could feel her fading, could feel the life force slipping from her as the energy that had once bound them began to recede. The toll had been far greater than either of them had anticipated. "No, Saratha," he whispered, pulling her closer. "We'll find another way. We'll live. We'll—" But she shook her head, a faint smile crossing her lips. "This is the way." With a final, shared breath, their eyes locked, not with fear, but with a quiet understanding that their love, their bond, had transcended the very stars themselves. It was not the end. It was only the beginning. Centuries passed, but the legacy of Kale Draven and Serath lived on in the hearts and minds of all who followed. The concord of two suns, a new galactic alliance born from their union, flourished, a testament to what could be achieved when two peoples, once at war, chose to bind their fates together. In the archives of both Terran and Zarthian history, their story was immortalized, not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as the ones who dared to change the very fabric of the galaxy. They had united not just through war, but through love, sacrifice, and the understanding that peace, though fragile, was the only way forward. Their statues stood in the center of both their home worlds, hands forever entwined, gazing toward the same horizon. The stars that had once divided them were now a single, shining symbol of hope, and though their bodies had long since faded into the dust of the cosmos, their souls lingered, intertwined in the minds of all who had learned from their sacrifice. And in the deep recesses of the galaxy, where the psychic web still stretched, the whispers of Kale and Saratha's voices could still be heard, faint but eternal, guiding the future. Together, they echoed, "We are the future,